In around a few months or so, it's going to be 3 years since Luffy vs Kaido concluded, and still to this day, people don't really know how to assess the fight and say who really won. Although yes, Luffy did win on the day, a lot of people do believe that if they were to fight again, Kaido would win. And while both sides have really good arguments that make it very even, in this video I feel like I'm going to get to the bottom of this so we can just end this debate and just move on from it. And so with that being said, why don't you strap in, because I'm going to get real in depth for this video. But before I get into the video, if you guys enjoy content like this, you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe, as I do post content like this regularly, and to be honest, it's a win-win. You guys show me love and support, and I give it back to you in the form of videos. Whether it's One Piece, other anime, or just fiction in general, in due time I plan on covering it, so be there when I go there. But I feel like I've rambled enough. When I get straight into the video and break down who is truly stronger between Luffy and Kaido. Now to begin the video, I'm going to go over the rules section, and the rules section is going to be extremely basic and easy for you guys to understand. Both Luffy and Kaido will be fresh going into this fight, and this is going to happen prior to 1136, as I don't like to read leaks anymore, so anything that happens inside that chapter is completely unbeknownst to me. I'll probably find out later, and if it does impact this battle, then womp womp. But I mean, to be honest, I don't think anything big is going to happen. Now the next rule I'm going to add is actually going to impact the fight more than a lot of you guys may think. This rule is going to be both of them are going to go to end the fight, meaning they're going to be very serious in this fight. They're not going to toy around with each other. It's just straight, okay, I have to get this other person out of there, so let's fight seriously. But with that being said, I feel like I've covered everything. The only other thing I can think of is where the fight is going to take place, and it's going to take place on Elbaf. So with that being said, when I get straight into the scaling. Begin the video, I'm going to start off with Kaido. Now it's actually pretty surprising I haven't covered Kaido on this channel in terms of power scaling, so why don't I dive straight into this. Now Kaido's AP, I wouldn't say it's the greatest in the verse, but it's definitely up there, as he's able to damage Luffy several times, just everybody that he comes across. He doesn't really do bad damage. He makes Gear 5 Luffy obviously scream out in pain and do other things, so yeah, Kaido's AP is extremely good. Next up is Kaido's speed. Now Kaido is extremely fast, as in the beginning he's able to blitz Luffy through his future sight, but also as the fight goes on and Luffy's using his gears, Kaido needs to activate his future sight. Now one thing I do want to add is the fact that when he did use his future sight, and it's mainly in the anime, we get to see that he just completely blitzes Gear 5 Luffy, and that's something that we're going to need to keep in mind while talking about this discussion. And so to follow up on his speed, we have his great durability. Now his durability is unquestionably really great. I'm going to delve more into why his durability is really good in his hack section, but for now all you need to know is that he does have base tough skin, and obviously we saw this at the start of Wano, and even as went throughout, we get to see that his tough skin does hold up, but obviously as we know, one of the hacks that he does have does make it 10 times better. So moving on, we have his greatest stat in my eyes, and that's his endurance. Now Kaido's endurance is basically put on display for everybody to see. He fights everybody on the island, obviously he fights Luffy how many times, and just overall him doing everything that he did on the island, and I'm saying on the island, he was the one lifting the island, and we know that this is pretty taxing because Momonosuke was even saying, okay, yeah, this is hard, and Yamato does mention that when obviously the clouds around it were starting to get weaker, Kaido was getting weaker as well, so we do know it's directly tied to his stamina, and that is extremely impressive. So yes, his endurance is really good, and probably going to be one of the major things that we're going to discuss in this video. Moving on, we have his battle IQ, and Kaido is not dumb in any way. The only thing is that he is extremely cocky, and I feel like because he knows that he has great endurance and durability, he likes to go out on his shield. We see this the most against Luffy, but I just feel like if he's being serious, I want to know how this is going to play out. And so obviously we're in the scaling section right now, so I'm not going to spoil obviously what I'm going to talk about later, but just know that his battle IQ is something that's going to come into question later. And so lastly for his section, we're going to have to go over his hacks, and I don't really feel like I need to go over Haki since this is obviously a One Piece based video, so everybody should know what Haki does. So I'm just going to focus on his Devil Fruit and obviously the things that his Devil Fruit gives him, and what obviously he can do with his Devil Fruit. Now his Devil Fruit is actually a fish Devil Fruit, but it's actually a dragon Devil Fruit. Essentially he just has the qualities of a dragon, everything but the wings. So you say what a dragon has, he probably has it. Obviously you have the extra tough skin, obviously the skills that they have. That's something that Kaido does add on to his naturally high durability. You then obviously have different abilities. Obviously I don't think every dragon can cover themselves in magma, but yeah, that's something that Kaido can do. There are a plethora of things that he can do, so I'm going to sit here and explain it in depthly for you guys. Now Kaido does have this weird little mode where he switches between his regular zone and the zone where his eyes are curly. I don't know what this is. It's definitely not an awakening because we know he doesn't have an awakening, but it's just a mode that's very weird. I don't know if I want to say it's drunken mode or it's just a mode that he can pop out. It's extremely weird, but we do know that it's more aggressive than his regular hybrid mode. Since it hasn't been confirmed on what this mode can do, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys, oh yes, this is what the mode can do, but from what we can see, it's a lot more aggressive than the regular mode. But it's weird, he does use it to take out Gear 4 Luffy, but doesn't then use it on Gear 5 Luffy. I don't really know what this mode is used for, but yeah, just know that it's there. And so when we move on from it, we have obviously his magma mode, and his magma mode is pretty good. By the name, obviously he can coat himself in magma, as I said before, and it's an extremely powerful move that Luffy had to just straight up use Haki to avoid since it was burning him too much. Now it's unclear whether he can do this in his regular hybrid mode, but if he could, that's extremely broken, but he hasn't shown it, so I'm not going to give it to him. Now since dragons fly, Kaido needs a way to fly, and he doesn't have wings, so what does he do? He uses clouds. Now his clouds are extremely powerful as they're able to hold up an island, and it does tie directly to his stamina, as I said before in his endurance section. And I feel like I said everything I need to say, but I'm going to add on a few things here. Aside from flying and holding up an island, it hasn't been used for anything else. And I was trying to think of ways you can use it offensively and whatnot, but I mean, to be honest, I doubt he'll probably even think of that. One thing we can say is that it's extremely impressive he was able to hold up the island while fighting Luffy, and that does give him a lot of stamina back, and that's going to be a massive factor in the fight as well. But to be honest, with that being said, I feel like I've covered everything I need to say with Kaido. So why don't I move into Luffy and scale him? And so shifting our focus onto our main character, we have Luffy. Now Luffy does have good AP as he's able to damage basically everyone he's ran into at this point now. But Kizaru is able to damage him. Obviously we're going to move the Gorosei to the side, they're not really involved. But yeah, with Kaido as well, his opponent in this video, he is able to hurt him, and obviously as we know, he did defeat him. And so yeah, Luffy does have really good AP. Now I just want to add that a lot of his attacks do hit hard, don't get me wrong, but you can tell the difference between a White Star gun and obviously the move that he used against Kaido versus a lot of his other attacks. That attack right there where he obviously goes through somebody's body hits way harder, and it's up there. Obviously I don't want it's not up there with the Barajan gun, but it's in that realm where it's like it's above his other attacks, but it's not at that top tier level. It's those attacks that are going to do lasting damage on the opponent, as I just said. Now the reason I bring this up is because he's going to be finding his other gears as well, and with his other gears it's obviously not going to do as much damage as his gear 5 moves. I mean, that's pretty simple, but I feel like even inside of his gear 5 bag, this move right here is definitely one of the more powerful ones. And so moving on, we have Luffy's speed. Now for his speed, Luffy is extremely fast, but when you get to that top tier status, there are characters that he can do things against. Like a lot of people do like to undermine the fact that he did catch Kizaru while he was moving. That is extremely impressive, but obviously when Kizaru was fighting him head on head, he was able to obviously distract him, do all these different things, since Kizaru is obviously faster than him. Same thing with Kaido. Kaido, when he's using his future sight, even in Gear 4 Snake Man or just Gear 5, I mean the Gear 5 one is anime only, but I feel like it should still be applicable in this situation, especially since it did happen inside the manga as well, where Luffy was still getting slapped up either way. So I want to believe that Kaido was using future sight in that scenario. And so you can then see that when these characters are going at their fastest, Luffy can be tagged a lot. But either way, Luffy should be contesting with those top tiers in terms of speed. So next up is his durability, and he's able to take multiple blows from Kaido, Kizaru, and just all these other people out there. He isn't somebody that's going to go down easily, so yeah, Luffy's durability is extremely good. So to follow up on this great durability, we have his endurance. Now, Luffy's endurance as a whole can be viewed in two different aspects, and I believe this is from the Gear 5 fight. Do you believe that Luffy came back with a sort of healed tank because of his awakened Zoan, or do you believe he just had his heart restarted and he came back, and when he was back he was just fighting for pure willpower? Now personally, I believe that both are true. I believe that he was given a slight boost, but at a certain point he was just using raw willpower to get through that entire fight. I think either of them are more applicable, then I mean that's fine, I don't really bothered, but I feel like a mix between the two is probably the best outcome you can get from it. So moving on, we have his battle IQ, and Luffy is extremely smart when it comes to battle. I mean, Kaido saw it firsthand, and that's his opponent in today's video. So yeah, Luffy's battle IQ, although it isn't like the greatest ever, it is still up there, and he isn't somebody that's going to stay stagnant. And now when we move on from his battle IQ, we have his hacks. Now I don't feel like I need to really explain Luffy's hacks, since, well, he used it against Kaido and we all know how his gears work. But since I'm so thorough, I'm gonna give you guys a dummy explanation. Luffy has 5 gears, his first gear being his base, the second one being obviously gear 2 where he amps himself by 10 times at a bare minimum, his third gear where he bloats a piece of his body up, gear 4 is when he melds Haki and his devil fruit together, and gear 5 is the awakening of his devil fruit, allowing him to do basically anything he wants. Now before I even jump into the video, there is something that Luffy has just done inside of the manga that is extremely helpful for this fight, and he's able to use his gear 4 inside of his base. Now this is something that a lot of people have pointed out, but I don't feel like they've actually assessed and just noticed how big of a buff this is for Luffy, and I'm going to explain why inside the actual versus battle. And to be honest, why don't we get into it? I might as well just stop beating around the bush, since that is why we're here. To be honest, these stats and whatever aren't really going to help, since, well, we already knew how the fight played out the first time. We just need to know if either of them have the stamina to last for the second fight. And so with that being said, why don't I just jump straight into the fight? Now to be honest, there are 2 versions of this fight that we need to now look at. It's the Luffy fan perspective and it's the Kaido fan perspective. Now either perspective in my eyes is sort of valid, but obviously it's a video where I'm going to tell you guys which one is the better one. But before I do, I'm going to give you guys a rundown on each perspective. And so to begin this section, I'm going to go over the Kaido fans perspective. Now the Kaido fans perspective in my eyes is very simple. They believe that Luffy was obviously getting assistance by everybody else, obviously Yamato being probably one of the main people, and obviously everybody else like Zoro obviously scarring them and whatnot. And then you then have him holding up an island, and obviously as I said, Luffy was able to come out multiple times and bleed his Haki and whatnot. And you could say that Kaido was messing around. The main reason you could say that Kaido was messing around was because he was matching Luffy's levels and going up with him as Luffy got stronger. And that is something that we do need to focus on. Yes, Kaido was obviously matching his levels, but he was being sort of stronger than Luffy at points. So he keeps reminding Luffy like, yeah, okay, you're having a good fight, but remember, I'm still the boss around here. And I feel like the best way we can obviously view that is when he's fighting him in 10:37, and then when he's fighting him in 10:10. Obviously Luffy was teeing off, and then after that you then get to see that Kaido just ramps it up, and Luffy's like, oh okay, I'm starting to see these levels now. And so essentially Kaido fans just believe that Luffy doesn't have the stamina to hang with him. So with that being said, when I move into Luffy's section and talk about his side. Now for the people that believe that Luffy wins, their whole point and argument is that, well, number one, he is Nika or Joy Boy, so he is going to defeat Kaido every single time since the story is going to force that to happen. Second of all, it's because Luffy is already beating his strongest attack, meaning if they were to get into a fight again, they're going to clash again like that. Luffy is going to win all the time since we've already seen it. And their third one, which is probably their biggest one, is the fact that Kaido fought Luffy while he was still on the brink of death and he wasn't fighting a full health bar Luffy, while Kaido was just tired. Now, this is something that I'm gonna obviously just tie back in since we're here. I've already explained Luffy's part, so why don't I just put the two against each other and give you guys my verdict of the whole situation. Now at the end of Luffy's section, I said that him being able to use his gear 4 inside his base is extremely helpful, as we all know that gear 4 Luffy is able to damage Kaido and put the work in on Kaido. The only thing that Luffy in this form is going to lack is speed. That's about it. And I feel like this battle is gonna be a fight where, depending on how it goes and depending on how Kaido wants to fight it, it could either go in Luffy's favor or it can go into Kaido's favor. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a draw. I know who I want to win, but I'm just saying that with these new developments that come out, and as we saw, Kaido was still toying around with Luffy until he got to Gear 5, and by then he was exhausted. There are many things that Kaido was doing throughout the fight that just made it extremely complicated for a lot of fans to see, but I want to put it bluntly. Kaido was messing around during that fight for some reason, lowering his power level to Luffy's power level, and then obviously having a great fight with him, building him up until he got to Gear 5. But I'm not going to lie to you guys, Luffy was still down there at the brink of death while fighting Kaido in his later form. And so now we then have to be like, okay, what is worse? Kaido holding up an island, fighting all these different people, and just everything else he was doing, versus Luffy, who grew to his level and then eventually beat him, and also had that Joy Boy aspect on with him as well. Now, from a standpoint where, if you're not including the story, I believe that due to the way how Luffy is using his Gear 5, I think that Kaido, if he doesn't be a knucklehead and he just doesn't like engage in another straight one-on-one with Badger and Gun, I think he would win, and it's only due to Luffy's stamina in Gear 5. But if it's a fight where it's like, I don't know, Kaido wants to actually just take Luffy on and he's like, yeah, cool, let's have another great fight, then Luffy is going to win that. And it also depends on how Luffy is going to play the fight. Is Luffy going to stay in base, or is Luffy just going to go straight into Gear 5? All these other things need to be answered, and when we look at the way how they fight, Luffy does fight with, oh yeah, Gear 5, let's go. Now, I'm not saying that Luffy can't hang with Kaido. I'm just saying that right now, Luffy doesn't have the stamina to fight Kaido. And I feel like at this level of characters, it all matters on what your best stat is. Luffy's best stat, in my eyes, is probably his AP and just his creativeness overall with the way how he fights. But with Kaido, it's just endurance. He can endure a lot, and because he's not putting that much stress in his body right now and he's fighting Luffy fresh, I feel like he should be able to last longer during their fight. But if you believe that Kaido's a knucklehead, he's just gonna go straight in and obviously try to box with Luffy the same way he was doing before, then I can easily see him losing. But in my eyes, if Kaido's actually being serious and he wants to take out Luffy, that's just not gonna happen, and yeah, Luffy is going to win that fight. But don't get me wrong, by the time Elbaf ends, I expect Luffy to be over Kaido, and if he doesn't have or hasn't shown us the ability to take down something like Kaido, which I do believe lies in him being able to get better at using his Gear 5, then yeah, we're gonna have to wait another arc for that to happen. But in my eyes, I feel like by the end of Elbaf, this thing will be put completely in the dust and we'll be like, okay, yeah, cool, you already know that Luffy does win. But for right now, I still do believe, only because of his time limit, Luffy does lose and Kaido is the victor. But yeah, that's it from me. I'm extremely tired. I think I'm addicted to Marvel Rivals. Yeah, I'm struggling with an addiction right now, so I'm gonna need to like cut that game out completely so I can get back to making more videos. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I sound very tired. I'm very tired. But yeah, I hope this video, I know this video is still gonna be toxic on both ends, but I hope you guys keep it civil inside the comment section. And yeah, I love you guys for all the support. And yeah, goodbye.